Victoria, welcome to Riveter's Time Well Spent.
Hi, it's nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
I want to start with the reason you and I met, which is a LinkedIn post that you put out in May of 2020, shortly after you lost your job at Uber. This LinkedIn post received hundreds of likes, dozens of comments, and really meant a lot to a lot of people. Tell me what you were thinking when you wrote the post, why you decided to write the post, and what that response was like for you.
Yeah, I wrote this post thinking about I lost my job in May, and I found out that I'm going to lose my job, and I really thought like how can I react to it in the middle of the pandemic. And I was just reading about the book of Viktor Frankl. That was a little bit of context. He was a Holocaust survivor, and when he was a doctor, and he lost his family, his friends, all his relatives, and he was the only one that stayed alive because he was a doctor, and he was tortured by the Nazis. And when he was tortured in the Nazis, like he thought like, I lost everything. I lost my house, my clothes, my family, everyone that was close to me. But the Nazis took everything, but there's one thing that they can't take, and it's my thoughts and my feelings and how I react to that situation. And he was imagining himself how he was giving lectures at a university and telling about his experience in the death camps. And it's amazingly, but it happened. In the end, he survived, and he was giving these lectures, and he wrote a book, and he was traveling the world. And his strong philosophy was that between stimulus and response, there is a space, and it's your kind of choice how you're going to react in that space. So whatever happened to you, you can't control external events. You can't control the pandemic, the war, the fires, or being healthy or not, but you can control how you react to it. And the idea behind my post is to think about what are the things that you can do and what is within your area of control, and respond with in a way. Of course, that said, that everyone have negative feelings. Everyone have shock and sadness and devastation, because it's really hard to find a job right now at the market. So it's okay to have these feelings. You can embrace them. You can, give yourself some space to feel it, but then think about like what you can do and what is within your area of control and how you can react.
I love that quote. So Viktor Frankl's book was Man's Search for Meaning. It was powerful. It was frightening. It was a lot of things. And I love that quote of between stimulus and response, there is a space, and that space is yours. Victoria, for you, when you lost your job, which was an exciting job, you were a leader at Uber. When you lost that being the stimulus, and you had that space before you made your response, what were the things that you were thinking about when you were talking to yourself, to your husband, when you were saying, hey, this is how I am going to handle this? What did that self-talk look like for you? And what did your plan look like for the first few weeks?
Well, that's a great question. I think that at the beginning, of course, I was kind of shocked. There is the curve, the mourning curve, the shock, grief, and then negotiation phase, and then you try to kind of overcome it and become better. So I feel like I went through this curve, but it was more like this than just a curve. It was like a bumpy road. And the first feeling, of course, was, oh no, we lost 40% of our income. So what are we going to do? How are we going to pay rent? How are we going to pay childcare? What are we going to do? How are we going to grow? Also, I'm going to have a hole in my resume. What am I going to say? And explain the recruiters that, yes, I was laid off. It's not because performance. It's because the company was reorganizing and laid off 20% of its business. Etc. So how can we, how am I going to deal with this? But then I thought, okay, one step at a time. And I made a list of all the things that, I'm scared about. And then I put on the other side, kind of like how I'm going to deal with this, like lost income. Okay, so we have unemployment, or we're going to cut some costs, or we're going to tap into savings. I'm going to have a hole in the resume. It's the pandemic. Like, hopefully, people will understand, and they do. I talk to many recruiters that, of course, they understand and very open to it and are aware of the situation. And making this list kind of helped me, thinking in my head how I'm going to organize my actions and what am I going to do moving forward. And sometimes when I have a low in that bumpy road, I look at this list again and refer to it and say, okay, we can find a solution. It's going to be okay.
I think writing down your fears makes them a little bit less scary. If you could just write down, if it takes 5 words to explain this thing that in your mind is this terrible, frightening thing that has no end, and you write it down and you say, well, what are people going to think about me being unemployed? Well, then it's not so bad. 50 million people are unemployed. It just becomes a little bit more manageable. So I like that practice of write down what makes you nervous, write down your biggest fears, and that's how you can own them. That's how you can control them. And then from there, write down what you're going to do to solve that.
Exactly.
You had a quote in your post where you said, crisis means opportunity. The word crisis originates from the Greek word crisis with a K, which means decisive point. Every change represents a new beginning, which translates into the opportunity to start again on the same or on a different path, but with more experience. I know for you, you wrote about how this is your opportunity to find a lot more growth, both personal and professional. So in the last few months, what does that growth look like for you? Where have you seen, what have you learned? What have you done? What have you experienced to be able to say, hey, this is my opportunity to grow in a new way?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's definite. Crisis definitely means growth or new opportunities in Greek. And in my personal case, I really was looking to grow in my area. I was a leadership development manager at Uber, and I was really looking to kind of tap into talent management, diversity and inclusion, and learn more about this type of work. And so for me, it meant I did a lot of networking. I reached out to people that work in that space and talked to them. I read lots of articles, and I've written other articles about specifically that, about diversity and inclusion, about promoting women into leadership positions, about things that about there was the means of the Black Lives Matter movement. So I educated, as I'm not American, of course I was aware of it, but I really educated myself about the history of it, how it happened, what we can do to help and be an ally. So it was really a lot of kind of in that area, growth opportunities for me. And I feel like I'm more knowledgeable. I'm smarter now than when I was before, when I was working, because when you're working, you're focused so much about your day-to-day job, like finish this project, finish this timeline or deadline, talk to this person, get their buy-in. You're very into that kind of nitty-gritty. And when you're unemployed, it really helps you to kind of take a step back and reevaluate what you want to do, what you don't want to do, what interests you, and look at the big picture.
That's so well said, that when you are working full time, your scope is very narrow, but all of a sudden when you're able to open up that scope, you don't know exactly what'll come in through the pipe, but you're able to bring a lot more in. You're able to learn a lot more. What does your days look like? Give me an example of how you structured. I know you did a lot of traveling, so we'll talk about that in a moment, but on a regular day, what does a day look like for you, and how do you think about structuring your week?
Yeah, that's a great question. As you're unemployed and you don't have like a specific structure, so it's very easy to get lost and go wander around. So I try to structure my day the best way I can. I wake up in the morning, I take care of my daughter. I bring her to daycare, and then I go for a walk, for like 40-minute walk, when I drop her out, if it's a good weather. And I listen to a LinkedIn learning course or a podcast or a book, and it helps me kind of start the day and start my thoughts and get the blood running in the veins. And then I come back, and usually I apply for jobs, or I have interviews during the day, or I focus on writing an article or something like that. And I try to take a pause, and somewhere in the middle of the day as well, to have lunch with my husband, or have another walk, or watch a show or something that is not related to job search. And then, the day goes by, and I pick up my daughter and dinner, and the days go really fast.
You have been like writing a lot and posting a lot on LinkedIn, and you mentioned the LinkedIn learning courses that you do. How have you used LinkedIn both to just write and share your thoughts and to learn? How has that been a useful tool for you?
Oh, it's been really useful. I signed up for LinkedIn Learning, so I'm also taking some courses.
Which ones? Which ones are you taking?
Which ones? It's in my profession. It's organizational effectiveness,
Mm,
organizational change management.
mm,
I'm also taking a lot about how to interview, because it's very specific of how we do it in
mm,
the US, how to use the STAR approach,
mm.
best practices for interviewing in the US, because the way we interview in Europe is very, very different. So it was another learning curve for me, to learn how to talk about my accomplishments and all that good stuff. So yeah, so for that, and how else, I signed up for the LinkedIn Premium, so I could see posts where I'm a top candidate,
Mm.
or when I'm like top 20%, top 10%. So I applied through there. Sometimes I could also see who the recruiter is, so I can reach out to them. And yeah, it's been a great tool, LinkedIn. And I read other people's posts. I'm following Adriana Huffington, Simon Sinek,
Mhm.
a lot of thought leaders, Sheryl Sandberg, and following their posts. So it's a great tool,
It's a
LinkedIn.
great place to learn, and it's a great place to share your own work as well. We talked a little bit about stimulus response, how you respond to things. Loss of a job is certainly a big stimulus that creates a tough response. But even throughout the unemployment process, you have these smaller bits of stimulus when you get rejected from a job. And that is a very difficult thing, especially when it happens often, and especially when you just know you're the right candidate for that job. When you know that nobody in the world is better for that job than you, but for some reason it's not yours. Tell me, Victoria, what's your advice to somebody who got rejected from a job today and they come to you and say, Victoria, I don't know how to respond. I'm frustrated, I'm angry, I'm upset, it's unfair. How do you respond? What's your advice to somebody who just had that happen to them?
Yeah, that's a great example. I was recently, just I'll tell you what happened to me. I was recently rejected for my dream job, my dream role that I was sure that I'm the best. It was exactly what I did, exactly what I wanted to continue doing in a great company. The hiring manager seemed fantastic, like one of the most fascinating people I met. And I was the second. She was hesitating between me and another candidate, and eventually she selected the other candidate. But I heard the feedback that it could have been you. It's just we had to make this choice. So of course I was devastated, because you hope so much, you dedicate so much time and effort and hope, and you refresh your email every 15 minutes to see if you have any news from them. So it's a lot, it's a lot. And what I learned from kind of that experience is to, first of all, get yourself emotionally detached. You're not your job, you're not defined by your job. You can be a great life partner, a friend, a husband, a wife, a fiance, a father, a mother, or any, you have so many other facets that you're not defined by your job. Second thing is definitely ask for feedback. Ask from the recruiter, from the hiring manager. It's okay to ask for feedback, and many people are very responsive to it. Third thing is that try to keep in touch with them. Maybe there's going to be other opportunities in the company that are open up in the near future. You never know. Maybe you'll have access to kind of the hidden job roles because you were, final round in this, so they'll reach out to you in priority. And of course, what's also important is to, if you have those feelings of devastation and sadness, so it's okay to have them. Give yourself that space to embrace it and mourn, but then know that there is other day, there is other opportunities, and keep on going.
Yeah, that's well said, especially that first part of, you are not just your job. You are a mother, a friend, a brother, an athlete, a movie lover, a writer, a reader, an eater, a chef,
Exactly.
whatever you are. That could be an opportunity to dive more into that other thing that you are as well.
Yes, exactly. And another important thing is self-care. Like, I used to feel guilty every time I had dedicated time for myself,
Mm-hmm.
because I said, oh no, it's not something that we have to do. It's not, necessary. But actually, during nowadays, it is necessary. We need to recharge our batteries, and we need to be with ourselves and feel good with who we are and what we're doing. So really take some time during the day or during the week, as much time as you need, and practice self-care, like read a book, take a bath, call your best friend or your mom, or now the salons are open, so get a massage if you feel comfortable. Anything that will, or call your, anything that you can do to kind of make yourself feel better. It's more than necessary. It's a must.
Yeah, one of the things that a lot of Riveter members do, and all these resources are free on Riveter, but you could join meditation apps. We have some on there that are free for many months. You could talk to a therapist. There's apps that are free for a month. You could exercise. There's services like Pivav or Aptive that are giving really big discounts to Riveter members. So self-care does not need to cost you money. Self-care could be reading a book or taking a walk or calling a friend. These are not necessarily expensive things, but these are super important things to make sure you're in the right mental state, the right physical state, to have good energy, live a really good, exciting life, things like that. This is not, people talk about unemployment being a gap on their resume, maybe, but it can't be a gap in your life, right? You can't just say, oh, I didn't have a job, so I was depressed and upset and angry and frightened. No, it's I didn't have a job. That's one thing. And I lived my life in this way. And that's another thing.
Exactly. I love that. I love that saying, that it can be a gap in your resume, but it cannot be a gap in your life. Life goes on, and you have to go on with it and think of how you can best optimize and maximize this time.
Yeah. Victoria, one final question for you. Your best friend loses their job today and they call you and say, Victoria, what do I do? How do I think about this? What am I supposed to do? How do you answer them?
That's a great question. Well, I think the first thing that you have to do is just listen. The person wants to probably vent their emotions, their shock, their feelings, or anything that, is in their mind. So just listen to them and let them vent. And then ask, like, how can you help? And what can you do? And sometimes, people straight away, sometimes automatically kind of jump into answers like, oh, let me see in my company, maybe they're hiring, or hey, and sending, like, I have friends that they really mean well, and they're sending like 5 job postings a day, like, hey, look at this job posting, look at this job posting. And sometimes they're not even related to, what, sometimes like technical, I don't know, programmer, that is completely not in my field. But I know they mean well. So just, listen to the person, and there is no cookie cutter approach. Really adapt your approach to your friend and what they need, and what they want from you.
Beautifully said. Victoria, thank you so much.
Thank you.